Hi, everyone, I'm Dan Abrams, and this is Court Game.
Ready to take your place?
Hey, turn around.
No! Turn around! Tatum.
It's Sunday, 8:30 p.m. at the Tulsa County Courthouse. The building is closed and appears to be empty. Empty except for 42-year-old Larry Teague. He's just smashed his way through the front door. As you can see by the broken glass and blood on Teague's hand. So what does this alleged intruder do now that he's inside the building? He called the police to report a crime.
911, police, fire, medical.
Against himself.
Yeah, is this really 911? I'm down here at the courthouse.
Teague claims he broke into the court to get away from people chasing him.
I
Hold
broke
on,
into
one
the...
moment. Hold on, one moment.
Police, fire, medical. This is a joke, ain't it? I need police, man.
How can I help you?
This can't be the police, man.
Okay, where are you at?
At the courthouse,
Okay.
across from the library.
And what's your name?
Larry Teague, man. Larry Sean Teague.
Okay. And what's going on exactly there? Hello? Larry?
The dispatcher sends a few officers down to the courthouse to assess the situation. When they arrive,
Hey, watch these cars. How we gotta clear this building? I want to start some help. Cover. Just in there.
the only person they find is Teague. Officers notice the wound on Teague's hand and attempt to calm him down.
Relax.
But Teague doesn't seem to trust the officers.
No, I'm not gonna do this, dude. Y'all taking me somewhere.
Go down to your knees.
That's what y'all want, ain't it? Hey, brother, okay, let's go 63. No, dude, y'all trying to keep me in a police car, dude. So y'all can take me somewhere. Hey, here to help you. I'm not stupid, man. So we need to listen to what we say.
After several failed attempts,
Hey, turn around. No,
the officers are finally losing patience.
turn around.
Tatum.
Last chance.
Turn around.
It seems negotiating is no longer an option, as the officer gives Teague one last chance as he hits the ground. He's taken to the station and charged with second-degree burglary, malicious injury to property, and resisting arrest. He was held in lieu of a $10,000 bond.
All right, let's take him outside. All right. I mean,
Roll in your stomach.
roll over.
But ultimately, the state failed to file charges, which essentially means the charges were dropped. Next, we head to the Washtenaw County Trial Court in Ann Arbor, Michigan for a hearing. The defendant, Donald Roberts, is accused of unarmed robbery, refusing fingerprinting, assault with intent to rob, and larceny. Roberts had been representing himself in the matter. The man standing next to him is attorney John Vella. Vella was ordered by the judge to be Roberts' standby counsel. Roberts had just finished telling the court about the poor state law library in jail and telling the court that he had no need for an attorney. Assistant Washtenaw County Prosecutor Brett Taylor responds.
Your Honor, I'm asking the court to use the report dated July 25th of Dr. Smith for purposes of finding incompetency, and I'm asking the court to find the defendant incompetent and to order him to the Forensic Center for treatment and restoring of competency. I have prepared a proposed order. I don't want to reiterate the other issues that have already brought us here. If the court wants me to respond regarding the law library, I can.
No, I've already ruled on that.
While his competency issue remains in question, Roberts has a question for the court.
What about my discovery? Let's talk about that.
Oh, let's not. Not right now.
Not the answer Roberts was looking for.
Oh, let's not. Not right now.
Roberts snaps and then off camera attempts to lift and knock over the lectern as a stunned Judge Swartz looks on. Roberts then charges at attorney John Vella before being quickly taken down by deputies. As the deputies move in, this woman carefully finds her way out by walking across a row of chairs to safety. The defendant is hauled away by deputies. Judge Swartz orders a competency hearing, and despite Roberts' obvious objections, appoints Vella as his representative. Roberts was eventually declared competent and pleaded no contest to larceny, while the other charges were dropped. Next, we head to Kalkaska, Michigan for the sentencing of Keith Ferguson. The 40-year-old pled guilty to first and second-degree murder, killing of his estranged wife, Tiffany Ferguson, as well as her father, James Weber. Ferguson shot his wife in front of their 4 children. Then, as she lay dying, Ferguson took the children to the home of his father-in-law and killed him. The children escaped to a neighbor's while Ferguson forced his way into a stranger's house and barricaded himself before finally surrendering to police. The motive, police believe, was that Tiffany had recently filed for divorce. At his arraignment, Ferguson had nothing but disdain for the judge and the court. When the judge tried to get Ferguson to participate in his own case, the behavior continued.
Mr. Ferguson, can I get you to stand up there and podium, please? All right, I need to have you raise your right hand for me. Okay, all right.
Put me back about
Okay, stop.
When it came to Ferguson's bond, the prosecution argued for the highest amount possible.
The fact that the defendant has already murdered and murdered multiple people and fled and has taken hostages, there's no doubt in my mind that this particular defendant has a high risk of non-appearance or danger to the public.
The judge agrees.
We have 2 murders. We have issues of flight, home invasion, kidnapping. Set it as a $10 million bond.
As part of Ferguson's guilty plea, a number of felony charges were dropped, including kidnapping and carrying explosives. On the day of his sentencing, Ferguson is much more civil than at previous court appearances. Before Judge George Mertz announces his sentence, Carla Seating, a friend of Tiffany Ferguson, delivers a powerful impact statement.
I knew one day he would kill her. She would always reply, "He loves his kids too much. He won't kill me." Well, we see how much he loved them. He loved them so much, he murdered their mother and grandfather. Why? You could have just taken your own life and saved these poor kids, their grandmother, friends, and community a horrific pain. Do you have any idea of the emotional pain your kids have suffered and will continue to suffer their entire lives? Your Honor, on behalf of the kids I swore life without any chance for parole. Thank you.
Next, it was the defendant's turn to speak, but there are no tears or apologies.
tragedy. Just sent me killing and among children. They've been too enough. And it would be good for me to school. I want to see.
Finally, it was time for the judge to hand down the sentence. But first, he had a few words for Ferguson.
May not meet the clinical definition of insanity, but there's clearly something fundamentally wrong with you. You're incapable of understanding that intentionally depriving an elderly woman of her husband for life, 4 children, and a mother, to satisfy your own selfish urges, justice, is something that deserves the most important and serious punishment. You'll never again have an opportunity to hurt any innocent people. You'll never again have the opportunity to be free.
The judge sentenced Ferguson to life in prison with no chance of parole.
They gotta take you out of here now, because I'm gonna come over there and smack you. Oh, yes, I am.
Next, we head to Nashville, Tennessee for a plea agreement hearing in the case against former police officer Andrew Delkey. 3 years earlier, the 24-year-old officer approached Daniel Hambrick, who he believed was driving a stolen car. Even though the car he was driving was not stolen, the 25-year-old takes off as seen on this security footage. Delkey pursued and claimed Hambrick pointed a gun at him. That's when he fired, hitting Hambrick in the head and twice in the back. Hambrick later died from his injuries. A gun was found, but there was no evidence Hambrick pointed it at the officer, since Delkey was not wearing a body camera. The officer was initially charged and indicted on first-degree murder. But just a few weeks before trial, Delkey agreed to plead guilty to a lesser charge of voluntary manslaughter, which the prosecution offered because they feared the possibility of a hung jury if the case went to trial. As a result, Delkey went from a potential life sentence to 3 years in prison. Before Judge Monty Watkins accepts the guilty plea, Delkey makes a statement to the court and the family of Daniel Hambrick.
I'm pleading guilty today because I recognize that my use of deadly force was not for her son that day, and I am responsible for her loss. These are facts that I will have to live with for the rest of my life. I hope this case can contribute positively to the much-needed discussion about how police officers are trained and how we, as a community, want police officers to interact with citizens. I am deeply sorry for the harm my actions cause, and I hope that Mr. Hambrick's family will obtain some comfort from my acceptance of responsibility and my guilty plea today.
The next person to speak is attorney and family friend Joy Kimbrough, who reads a statement on behalf of Hambrick's mother.
There is not 1 hour that goes by that I do not think of Daniel. I am angry, mad, and disgusted. I am against this so-called plea deal. My son has a right. He has a right to a public jury trial. I want citizens of this community to render a judgment.
Okay. All right, folks. All right, let's hold this down.
Members of Hambrick's family and others in the gallery react to the statement, but Judge Watkins demands order in the court.
I've allowed you some latitude, but we're going to have some order in this courtroom. Do we understand each other? All right?
I have contempt for this plea, and I have a special contempt for Andrew Delkey. May you all rot in hell.
When Kimbrough was finished, Hambrick's mother, who is legally blind, had a few final, unscripted words for the court.
I can't believe this, Judge. I can't believe it. I've been going through this for 3 years. I can't believe it.
Yes, take your time.
He calling you! He calling himself! I hate you! I hate you! I don't accept your apology. I don't accept it. What if the tables turn? Judge, what if the tables turn? Just look at the tape. What if it's your child? Damn it, you better watch your back in jail. Go faster. You better be scared. You better be scared. They gotta take you out of here now because I'm gonna go there and smack the out of you. Oh, yes, I am. They better take you out.
Delkey's removed from the court as family members struggle to restrain the infuriated Hambrick. By pleading guilty to voluntary manslaughter, Delkey is sentenced to 3 years in a state prison. Next, we go to the Arapahoe District Court in Centennial, Colorado, for a case covered by the national news media. The defendant is 27-year-old James Holmes. He's charged with killing 12 people and injuring 70 during a mass shooting inside an Aurora movie theater. The defendant entered a packed theater with multiple weapons and allegedly fired on a group of defenseless spectators. He surrendered that evening and later was charged with 165 felonies. The state is seeking the death penalty, while Holmes pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity.
I think I explained to counsel.
It's day 25 of the trial, and the judge is Carlos Samore Jr. He's about to bring the jury back into the courtroom. But first, he checks with the state and the defense.
Is there anything that we need to talk about at this time before we bring the jury in on behalf of the people? Your Honor. On behalf of the defense. Ms. Brady?
That's one of the defense attorneys, Tamara Brady.
Yes, Your Honor. As the court's aware, the court issued an order to the parties that the parties are not to tweet via Twitter during the trial in court. And it came to our attention last night that Mr. Brockler issued a tweet at 4:51 p.m., which would have been during the cross-examination of Dr. Reed.
Throughout the previous day's proceedings, District Attorney George Brockler grabbed his phone multiple times and at one point sent out a tweet. All this while the court-appointed psychiatrist, Dr. William Reed, testified about Holmes' mental condition.
I assume the court issued this order for a good reason. I would state, though, that if the prosecution is seeking the execution of a man, perhaps the district attorney should pay attention to the cross-examination of the mental health expert instead of chatting on social media.
The judge asked Brady to read the tweet to the court.
It states, "I agree on the video. I hope the jury thinks so too."
All right, Mr. Brockler.
Your Honor, first, I apologize for how this happened, but I want to explain I was not on social media at the time. I thought I was replying to on text, and this is over Twitter, and then I quickly deleted it.
Judge, I would note that before the correction, it was retweeted at least 3 times. So, as the court knows, once it gets out there, it spreads exponentially.
Now it's up to the judge to decide how he wants to handle the situation.
I specifically said I don't want anyone sending tweets from the courtroom about anything. If I can stay off of electronic communications, so can you, so can everybody here. All right?
There's no fallout over the tweet for Brockler personally, but it did have an impact on the trial. Because it went public, 3 jurors who became aware of the message were dismissed and sent home. They were replaced and the trial went forward. Holmes was convicted on all 165 counts and sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole. That's it for this edition of Court Cam. I'm Dan Abrams. Thanks for watching.